A 6-year-old girl knocks on the door of a 35-year-old millionaire and says, "Mum just died. Can I spend just one day with you, Daddy?" The millionaire turned pale. Before we begin, let's create a wave of positivity. Comment one word that describes how you're feeling today. The doorbell rang at precisely 7:15 on a rainy Tuesday evening. Maxwell Price sighed, setting down his crystal tumbler of bourbon. Who could possibly be at his door? The staff had left for the day, and he wasn't expecting any visitors. As the CEO of Price Industries, unexpected visits at his private residence were rare and unwelcome. The bell chimed again, more insistent this time. "Coming!" he called out, annoyed at the interruption. The financial reports for the third quarter had just arrived, and figures were down. The last thing he needed was a distraction. Maxwell strode across the marble foyer of his Boston penthouse, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the floor. Through the peephole he saw nothing. Frowning, he engaged the security chain before opening the door a crack. There, standing on his welcome mat, was a small girl, no more than 6 years old, with honey blonde hair falling in damp curls around her face. She wore a pink backpack and clutched a worn teddy bear. Her wide blue eyes, oddly familiar, stared up at him. "Can I help you?" Maxwell asked, confusion replacing irritation. "Are you lost?" The child shook her head, raindrops flying from her hair. "Are you Mr. Maxwell Price?" she asked in a small, clear voice. "Yes," he replied cautiously. "Where are your parents?" The little girl's chin trembled slightly, but her gaze remained steady. "Mommy said I should come find you if anything happened to her." She took a deep breath. "She died yesterday. The lady from social services brought me here because Mommy left a letter." Maxwell's hand tightened on the doorframe. "I'm sorry about your mother, but there must be some mistake. Who was she?" "Her name was Olivia Hayes." The child's voice wavered. "I'm Emma Hayes." The name hit Maxwell like a physical blow. Olivia Hayes. 7 years ago, the summer before his company went public, before he became worth millions. The woman who disappeared from his life without explanation. "That's impossible," he whispered, more to himself than to the child. Emma reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded, slightly damp envelope. "Mommy said to give you this." Maxwell stared at the letter, his name written in the familiar handwriting he hadn't seen in years. His fingers trembled slightly as he reached for it. "Mr. Price," Emma's voice was barely audible now. "Mommy's gone. Can I please stay with you? Just for tonight," she said. "She said you're my daddy." The world tilted beneath Maxwell's feet. He gripped the doorframe to steady himself, suddenly feeling light-headed. I can't be." A raindrop fell from Emma's hair onto her cheek, mingling with what might have been a tear. "Please, Daddy. Just for tonight? I don't have anywhere else to go." Maxwell looked at the child, really looked at her, and saw Olivia's delicate nose, her determined chin. But those eyes, those startlingly blue eyes, were unmistakably his own, staring back at him from a face that suddenly seemed to reveal all the answers to questions he hadn't known to ask. Behind Emma, the elevator dinged, and a harried-looking woman in a practical suit stepped out, holding a folder. "Mr. Price, I'm Deborah Wilson from Child Protective Services. I see Emma found you." She hurried forward. "I'm so sorry about this unusual situation, but with Ms. Hayes' passing, we needed to follow her documented wishes to contact you immediately." Maxwell stood frozen in the doorway, the unopened letter in his hand, feeling as heavy as the realization dawning upon him. "May we come in?" Ms. Wilson asked. "There's quite a bit we need to discuss." Emma looked up at him with those familiar blue eyes, clutching her teddy bear tighter. "Please, Daddy." The word, "Daddy," echoed in Maxwell's mind, sending shockwaves through his carefully ordered world. Maxwell's hands trembled as he poured himself another bourbon. From the living room, he could hear Ms. Wilson quietly talking to Emma. Words like adjustment period and transition floated into the kitchen where he had retreated, ostensibly to make hot chocolate for the child, his child, but really to gather his fractured thoughts. The letter from Olivia lay open on the granite countertop, its contents having turned his world upside down in just a few paragraphs. Dear Max, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Emma has found her way to you. Yes, she's yours. I discovered I was pregnant after I left Boston. I tried to contact you, but you had already moved, changed numbers, and your new company was just taking off. I convinced myself you wouldn't want the complication of a child. Perhaps that was unfair. For that, I'm sorry. Emma is everything good in this world. She's smart, kind, and braver than any 6-year-old should need to be. She has your eyes and your stubborn determination. I've told her about you, the good parts. She knows you didn't abandon her, you just didn't know about her. I have no family left, Max, no one I would trust with our daughter. DNA tests confirming paternity are in the envelope. Please, if you ever cared for me at all, care for the beautiful life we created. Always, Olivia. Maxwell closed his eyes, memories washing over him. 7 years ago, he was just another ambitious entrepreneur, working 18-hour days, determined to make his mark. Olivia had been a bright spot in that chaotic time, the art gallery curator with the infectious laugh who somehow convinced him to take Sundays off. Until that morning, he woke to find her gone. A simple note saying their worlds were too different, that she couldn't fit into his future. He'd been hurt, then angry, then simply buried himself deeper in work. Now he understood the real reason she'd left. Mr. Price. Ms. Wilson appeared in the doorway, startling him from his thoughts. Emma's getting tired. I've explained that she'll be staying with you tonight while we sort things out. Is that legal? Maxwell asked, feeling completely out of his depth. Don't you need to verify? Ms. Hayes's documentation is quite thorough, she replied, handing him her card. The DNA test results appear legitimate, though we'll conduct our own to confirm. As the biological father with no history of legal issues, you have rights. The question is what you want to do with them. What did he want? 12 hours ago, his biggest concern had been the quarterly reports. Now, a small girl with his eyes was sitting in his living room, expecting him to be her father. I don't know the first thing about children, he admitted. I work constantly. My home isn't child-proof. I have meetings in Tokyo next week. Ms. Wilson's expression remained professionally neutral. There are alternatives. Foster care, while we search for any extended family. The thought of Emma, Olivia's daughter, his daughter, in foster care, made something protective and primitive stir in Maxwell's chest. No, he said firmly. She stays with me. At least for now. Ms. Wilson nodded. I'll be checking in regularly. You'll need to file for temporary guardianship while paternity is confirmed. After that, we can discuss permanent arrangements. Permanent. The word echoed in Maxwell's mind. Nothing in his life had prepared him for this. Ms. Wilson lowered her voice. Mr. Price, Emma has just lost her mother. She's showing remarkable resilience, but she's still a traumatized child. Whatever you decide long-term, please be gentle with her heart in the meantime. Maxwell nodded, gathering the mugs of hot chocolate. As he returned to the living room, he saw Emma sitting primly on his white leather sofa, looking impossibly small against the minimalist furniture designed for style rather than comfort. I put extra marshmallows in yours, he said, offering her a mug. Emma accepted it carefully. Thank you. After a hesitant sip, she asked, Did you know my mommy well? Maxwell sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance. I did, a long time ago. She was special. She said you were very smart and worked very hard. That's why you have this big house. Emma looked around at the stark, modern penthouse. It's pretty. But where are all your pictures? Pictures? On your walls. Mommy had pictures everywhere. Of me, of Grandma and Grandpa, of her paintings. Maxwell suddenly saw his home through a child's eyes. The cold, impersonal space he'd paid an interior designer a fortune to create. "I'm not home much," he explained lamely. Emma nodded seriously. "Will I go to school tomorrow?" The simple question highlighted how unprepared he was. School, routines, a child's needs. "Not tomorrow," he said. "We'll need to figure some things out first." "Okay." Emma yawned, revealing a gap where her front tooth should be. "Mommy said you might be surprised to see me, but that you'd know what to do, because grown-ups always figure things out." Maxwell felt his throat tighten. Olivia had always believed the best of him, even at the end. As Emma's eyelids grew heavy, Maxwell realized with a jolt of panic that he had no idea where she would sleep. No spare room was prepared, no child-sized pajamas, nothing. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away the certainties of his old life, leaving only questions in its wake. "Mr. Price, the board meeting starts in 15 minutes. Rebecca, Maxwell's executive assistant, reminded him as she placed a stack of folders on his desk. 3 days had passed since Emma arrived at his door. 3 days of hasty arrangements, phone calls with lawyers, and a crash course in parenting a grieving 6-year-old. "Cancel it," Maxwell said. Not looking up from his laptop where he was researching elementary schools, Rebecca blinked. "Sir, this is the quarterly review." "The entire board is already here, including Mr. Thompson, who flew in from London specifically for this meeting." Maxwell rubbed his temples. He had barely slept last night. Emma had woken crying for her mother at 2 a.m., and he'd sat awkwardly at the edge of the guest bed, patting her back until she fell asleep again. "Reschedule for next week," he said, finally looking up at his assistant's shocked expression. "Family emergency." The word family felt strange on his tongue. Until 3 days ago, he'd had no family to speak of. His parents had died in a car accident during his senior year of college. No siblings. His few relationships had been brief casualties of his ambition. Now he had Emma, currently being watched by the hastily hired nanny, a grandmotherly woman named Mrs. Sullivan, who had raised 5 children of her own and came highly recommended by his lawyer's wife. "Family emergency?" Rebecca repeated, confusion evident. In 5 years as his assistant, she'd never known Maxwell to prioritize anything over work. "Yes," Maxwell closed his laptop decisively. "And I need you to clear my schedule for the rest of the week. Also, find out who handles pediatrics at Mass General. The best doctor they have." Rebecca's professional composure slipped. "Sir, are you ill?" "Not for me." Maxwell stood, gathering his things. "I need to get home. Tell Thompson I'll call him personally to explain." As Maxwell strode through the office, he was aware of the curious glances from employees who had never seen their CEO leave before 8 p.m. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Sullivan. "Emma asking when you'll be home. She made you a picture." Something warm and unfamiliar expanded in Maxwell's chest. 30 minutes later, he walked through his front door to find Emma at the dining table, surrounded by art supplies. Mrs. Sullivan looked up in surprise. "You're early, Mr. Price." "Maxwell, please," he corrected automatically, his attention on Emma, who was carefully coloring what appeared to be a purple dinosaur wearing a business suit. Emma looked up, her face brightening. "You came back!" The simple statement hit Maxwell like a physical blow. Of course she would worry about people leaving and not returning. Her mother had just died. "I live here," he said, setting down his briefcase. "I'll always come back." Emma slid off her chair and approached him shyly, holding out her drawing. "I made this for your office. Mrs. Sullivan said you might like it." Maxwell accepted the artwork solemnly. "It's excellent, thank you." "It's you," Emma explained, pointing to the dinosaur, "but as a T-Rex, because they're strong and have big teeth." Mrs. Sullivan helped me write your name." Sure enough, Mr. Maxwell was printed in wobbly letters across the top. "I'll put it right on my desk," Maxwell promised, suddenly determined to do exactly that, regardless of what his executive team might think. After Mrs. Sullivan left, with arrangements to return the next morning, Maxwell faced his first evening alone with Emma. He'd ordered dinner delivered, pizza, which seemed like a safe choice, and now they sat across from each other at his massive dining table. "Do you want to see Mommy?" Emma asked suddenly, pulling a small photo album from her backpack. Maxwell's heart raced. "Yes," he managed, taking the album with unsteady hands. There she was. Olivia, her chestnut hair longer than he remembered, laughing at the camera while holding a toddler Emma. Page after page of a life he knew nothing about. Birthdays, first steps, a trip to the beach. "This was my 5th birthday." Emma pointed to a photo of Olivia placing a crown on her daughter's head. "Mommy made me a princess cake." Maxwell studied Olivia's face in the photographs. She looked tired in some, but happy, genuinely happy, in a way he wasn't sure he'd ever been. "Your mother was very beautiful," he said finally. "She got real sick last year," Emma confided, her small finger tracing Olivia's image. "That's why her hair is different in these ones. The medicine made it fall out, but then it grew back curly. She said it was magic. Cancer. It had to have been cancer. Why hadn't Olivia reached out to him then? Pride? Fear? The thought that she had faced illness alone while raising their child made his chest ache with a complex mixture of guilt and grief. "Emma," Maxwell began carefully, "I want you to know that if I had known about you, I would have helped, your mother and you." Emma regarded him with those uncannily familiar blue eyes. "Mommy said you didn't know about me because you were very busy becoming important, but that someday, when I needed you, you would be there." She tilted her head. "Are you important now?" The question, so innocent and yet so piercing, made Maxwell reassess everything he had built. His company employed thousands. His innovations had changed industries. His wealth could buy almost anything, except the years he had missed with his daughter. "I thought I was," he answered honestly. "Now, I'm not so sure." "Absolutely not," Maxwell said firmly into his phone, pacing the length of his home office. "The Jensen acquisition stays on hold until I personally review the numbers." He glanced at his watch. 2:45 p.m. 15 minutes until he needed to leave to pick up Emma from her first day at her new school. After 2 weeks of temporary guardianship, DNA tests had confirmed what Maxwell had already accepted in his heart. Emma was unquestionably his daughter. The courts had granted him full custody, given that Olivia had named him in her will, and there were no other family members to contest it. His life had been completely restructured around Emma's needs. The sterile penthouse was slowly transforming. Colourful artwork appeared on previously bare walls. A plush purple comforter replaced crisp white linens in what was now officially Emma's bedroom, and child-proofing experts had been summoned to secure cabinets and cover sharp corners. "Sir, the board is requesting an emergency meeting," his assistant said through the speakerphone. "They're concerned about your reduced hours and the Jensen delay." Maxwell sighed. "Schedule it for tomorrow morning, 9 sharp. He ended the call and checked his watch again. 2:47 p.m. The nanny had called in sick this morning, throwing his carefully calibrated schedule into chaos. He had brought Emma to school himself, sitting awkwardly among mothers in yoga pants at drop-off, and now he would need to leave an executives meeting early to pick her up. His phone rang again. Robert Thompson, his largest investor. "Maxwell," Thompson's British accent was clipped with impatience. "What's this I hear about delaying Jensen? We discussed this extensively last quarter." "New information has come to light," Maxwell replied, gathering his keys. "Their debt structure is more complex than initially reported." "That's what we have accountants for," Thompson retorted. This hesitation isn't like you. The rumors circulating about your domestic situation are concerning investors. Maxwell stiffened. My domestic situation is my daughter, Robert, and she's not up for discussion. A daughter no one knew existed until 2 weeks ago, Thompson said bluntly. A convenient claim right after your company valuation hit 8 figures. White-hot anger flashed through Maxwell. Emma is my child. That's been legally established. If you or any other investor has concerns about my commitment to Price Industries, I'll be happy to buy back your shares. Silence crackled over the line. That won't be necessary, Thompson finally said. But the board meeting tomorrow, be prepared to address how you intend to balance your new responsibilities. Maxwell ended the call and stood still for a moment, unexpected emotions churning within him. In 2 weeks, Emma had become more important to him than he could have imagined possible. The fierce protectiveness he felt toward her had blindsided him completely. At 3:15, Maxwell stood outside Westfield Elementary with a cluster of mothers and nannies. He checked his watch repeatedly, uncomfortable in this unfamiliar territory. First pickup? A friendly voice asked. He turned to see a woman in her 30s with a toddler balanced on her hip. Is it that obvious? Maxwell asked wryly. She laughed. You have that, am I in the right place? Look, I'm Jessica, by the way. My daughter Zoe is in 1st grade. Maxwell, my daughter Emma just started today. The words still felt strange on his tongue. My daughter Emma. New to the neighborhood? Jessica asked. Before Maxwell could answer, the school doors opened and children began streaming out. He spotted Emma immediately, her blonde hair tied back in a neat ponytail that Mrs. Sullivan had done this morning. She was walking beside a dark-haired girl, chattering animatedly. When Emma saw him, her entire face lit up. "Daddy!" she called, breaking into a run. Daddy. Another word he was still getting used to. Emma crashed into his legs, wrapping her arms around him. I drew a frog in art class, and Ms. Bennett said it was the best frog ever, and I made a friend named Lily, and we played princesses at recess. Maxwell found himself smiling genuinely. Sounds like a good first day. The best day, Emma corrected seriously. Can Lily come over to play sometime? Her mom said to ask you. We'll see, Maxwell hedged, not ready to add playdates to his rapidly changing life. As they walked to his car, Emma slipped her small hand into his. The simple gesture of trust made his throat tighten unexpectedly. Mr. Maxwell, Emma said, using the formal name she sometimes reverted to, are you still going to be my daddy even when I'm not sad about Mommy anymore? Maxwell stopped walking, kneeling down to her eye level in the middle of the sidewalk. Emma, I will always be your father. No matter what, do you understand? She studied his face carefully before nodding. Good, because I think Mommy would be happy you're taking care of me now. As they drove home, Emma chattering about her day from the booster seat in the back, Maxwell's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from the office. For the first time in his career, he let them go unanswered. You did what? Caroline Williams, Maxwell's corporate attorney, stared at him across his desk in disbelief. I turned down the merger, Maxwell repeated calmly, straightening a framed crayon drawing of a purple dinosaur prominently displayed beside his computer. A merger that would have increased shareholder value by 28%, Caroline reminded him, her voice rising slightly. The board is in an uproar. Thompson is threatening to call for your removal as CEO. Maxwell leaned back in his chair, surprisingly unbothered. 6 weeks ago, such a threat would have sent him into a strategic frenzy, working around the clock to neutralize opposition. Now, he merely shrugged. The merger would have meant relocating to Chicago for at least 8 months. Emma just started at her new school. She's made friends. She has a routine now. Caroline pinched the bridge of her nose. Maxwell, I say this as your friend, as well as your attorney. You've built this company from nothing. Are you really willing to risk everything for a child you've known for 6 weeks? 7 weeks, Maxwell corrected automatically. And yes, the certainty in his voice surprised even him. In the brief time since Emma had appeared at his door, his priorities had shifted fundamentally. The realization had come gradually, then all at once, crystallizing last weekend when he had taken Emma to the Children's Museum instead of attending a crucial strategy session. Watching her wide-eyed wonder at simple experiments, her uninhibited laughter, her small hand trustingly in his, he'd suddenly understood what truly mattered. Not the next acquisition, not the stock price, not the corner office with its view of Boston Harbor. "I'm not abandoning the company," Maxwell clarified, seeing Caroline's continued dismay. "I'm restructuring my role. The board meeting tomorrow isn't about the merger, it's about my proposal to move to executive chairman. Daily operations would shift to Rebecca." "Your assistant?" Caroline's eyebrows shot up. "You want to make your assistant CEO?" "My chief operating officer," Maxwell corrected. "I promoted her last week. She's been running things behind the scenes for years anyway. The company will be fine." Caroline studied him, her expression softening slightly. "You've really changed, Max." Before he could respond, his phone chimed with a text from Mrs. Sullivan. "Emma asking if you'll be home for dinner, making chicken dinosaurs." Maxwell smiled, typing a quick, "Yes, 6 p.m. sharp." "I need to go," he told Caroline, gathering his things. "School pickup." "You know," Caroline said as he stood to leave, "when you first told me about Emma, I thought it would be a temporary disruption. That you'd make arrangements, boarding school, full-time nanny, the usual wealthy single-father solution." She shook her head, smiling slightly. "I never expected you to become a hands-on dad." Maxwell hadn't expected it either. But last night, when Emma had a nightmare and crawled into his bed, curling trustingly against his side, he'd realized there was nowhere else he would rather be. The transformation of his penthouse continued. Emma's influence had spread beyond her bedroom. Family photos now adorned the living room walls, including several of Olivia that Emma had insisted on framing. "So we don't forget what Mommy looked like," she had explained solemnly. Toy storage bins sat alongside his modernist furniture. A growth chart had been penciled onto the wall of the kitchen. His pristine white sofa now bore a small pink stain from a spilled strawberry smoothie, and somehow his stark apartment had begun to feel like a home. After picking up Emma from school, they stopped at the grocery store. Another new routine. Emma rode in the cart, helping him select items for the week. "Can we get Lucky Charms?" she asked hopefully, pointing to the colorful cereal boxes. "Your mom let you have Lucky Charms?" Maxwell asked skeptically, remembering Olivia's passionate opinions about organic food. Emma's face fell slightly at the mention of her mother. "Only on special days. But she said we should try new things in our new life." Our new life. The phrase echoed in Maxwell's mind. That's exactly what this was. "One box," he agreed, unable to resist her hopeful expression. "For special days." At home, Emma set the table while Maxwell heated the dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets Mrs. Sullivan had prepared. Another change. He now left work early enough to relieve the nanny and have dinner with Emma himself. "Mr. Maxwell," Emma began, carefully cutting her broccoli into tiny pieces, "is your job mad at you because of me?" Maxwell nearly choked on his water. "What? No. Why would you think that?" Emma pushed her broccoli around her plate. "I heard Mrs. Sullivan talking on the phone. She said you were giving up your big job because of family obligations. That's me, right? I'm the family obligation." The innocent question broke Maxwell's heart a little. "Emma, look at me," he said gently. "You're not an obligation. You're a gift I didn't know I wanted until you arrived. And I'm not giving up anything important. I'm gaining something better. But you worked really hard to be the boss, Emma persisted. Mommy said you were the smartest, hardest working person she ever knew. Maxwell thought about Olivia, about the choices they had both made. Being the boss isn't always what matters most. It took me a long time to learn that. Too long. Later, after bath time and 2 bedtime stories, Maxwell sat on the edge of Emma's bed, watching her eyelids grow heavy. "Daddy," she murmured sleepily. "I'm glad you're my daddy." As Emma drifted off to sleep, Maxwell remained beside her, marveling at how completely this small person had changed his life in just 7 weeks. Tomorrow he would face the board and likely face significant resistance to his restructuring plan. His carefully built empire might indeed be at risk. And for the first time in his driven, ambitious life, Maxwell Price found that he didn't care. "Daddy, hurry! We're going to be late," Emma called, already at the door with her backpack securely fastened. Today was the elementary school's father-daughter dance, an event Maxwell had initially considered skipping until he saw Emma's excitement when she brought home the flyer. "1 minute," Maxwell replied, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. After 3 months of fatherhood, he had mastered the basics: school lunches, bedtime routines, treating minor scrapes, but social events still made him nervous, especially ones involving other parents. His phone buzzed. Rebecca, now officially CEO of Price Industries, with questions about the Tokyo expansion. It could wait. "How do I look?" Maxwell asked Emma seriously as he joined her at the door. She assessed him critically, head tilted. "You need a flower. All the dads wear flowers." "A flower? A corsage?" Emma nodded confidently, mispronouncing the word. "I think you mean a boutonniere," Maxwell corrected gently. "For dads it's called a boutonniere." Emma shrugged. "Mrs. Sullivan helped me get one for you." She reached into her backpack and carefully removed a slightly crushed pink carnation with a pin attached. She showed me how to put it on, too. Maxwell knelt down so Emma could reach his lapel. Her small face scrunched in concentration as she attempted to attach the flower, her tongue poking out slightly between her teeth, an expression so reminiscent of Olivia that it made his heart ache. "There," she announced proudly, though the flower hung at an odd angle. "Now you're perfect." In the car, Emma chattered excitedly about her classmates and their fathers. Maxwell listened, trying to match names to the few parents he'd met during drop-off and pickup. "Lily's dad is a firefighter," Emma informed him, "and Zoe's dad cooks at a restaurant. What do you tell people you do?" The question caught Maxwell off guard. "I tell them I run a company." Emma nodded. "Mrs. Sullivan says you're very important and make life-changing innovations, but I don't know what that means." Maxwell smiled. "It means I help make new things that help people do their jobs better." "Like teachers?" "Sometimes teachers, sometimes doctors or scientists." Emma considered this. "That's good, but not as good as a firefighter, right? Because they save people from burning buildings." Maxwell laughed. "Definitely not as good as a firefighter." At the school, the gymnasium had been transformed with streamers and balloons. Dozens of fathers and daughters in party clothes filled the space, many already dancing to upbeat music. Emma tugged his hand. "Look, there's Lily. Can I go say hi?" "Of course." Maxwell nodded, watching as she darted off to join a group of girls comparing dresses. He stood awkwardly at the edge of the room, painfully aware of his outsider status in this community of families. "First dance?" a voice asked beside him. Maxwell turned to see a man in his late 30s, holding a cup of punch. "Is it that obvious?" Maxwell asked ruefully. The man laughed. "You have that emergency exit look all as dads had the first time. I'm Daniel, Zoe's dad." Maxwell, Emma's father. The introduction was becoming more natural now. Emma's father, not CEO, not founder. Father. Ah, you're the new guy. Single dad, right? Emma's in my Zoe's class. Great kid. Maxwell nodded, unsure how much of his situation was common knowledge. Yes, Emma's mother passed away recently. Daniel's expression sobered. I heard. That's tough. My wife and I were wondering if Emma might like to come for a play date sometime. Zoe talks about her constantly. Before Maxwell could respond, the music changed to a slower song, and Emma appeared at his side. Daddy, it's time for the daddy-daughter dance. She tugged his hand urgently. Come on. On the dance floor, Maxwell lifted Emma to stand on his shoes, holding her small hands as they swayed to the music. Her face was alight with joy, completely present in the moment. Are you having fun? He asked. Emma nodded enthusiastically. This is the best night ever. All the girls said my dad is the most handsome one here. Maxwell smiled, oddly touched by this schoolyard assessment. Well, I definitely have the most beautiful daughter. As they danced, Maxwell caught sight of them in the reflection of the gymnasium windows, the tall man in the expensive suit with the crooked pink carnation, and the small girl with her mother's smile and his blue eyes. 3 months ago, he wouldn't have recognized his life. The board had reluctantly accepted his role change, though Thompson and several others had indeed voted against him. The company stock had dipped briefly before stabilizing. His income had decreased considerably with his reduced role, and yet he had never been happier. Later that night, as he tucked an exhausted Emma into bed, she asked drowsily, Daddy, are we a real family now? The question caught him off guard. Of course we are. Why do you ask? Emma yawned. Because families live together forever. You won't send me away when I'm not sad about Mommy anymore, right? You promised. Maxwell's chest tightened as he realized Emma was still carrying that fear. Emma, listen to me, he said, sitting on the edge of her bed. You and me, we're a family. Forever. Nothing will change that. I'm your father, and you're my daughter, and that's the most important job I'll ever have. Emma studied his face in that serious way she had, searching for truth. Finally, she nodded, apparently satisfied. Good, because I think I'm going to be happy again soon. I still miss Mommy, but not in the hurting way so much anymore. Maxwell smoothed her hair gently. Your mom would be very proud of how brave you've been. She would be proud of you too, Emma said with certainty. She always said you just needed something important to care about. She yawned again. I guess that's me now. As Emma drifted off to sleep, Maxwell remained beside her, thinking about Olivia's insight. She had known him better than he knew himself. His phone vibrated silently in his pocket, likely another message from the office. Tomorrow he would deal with whatever corporate crisis had arisen. Tonight he would sit a little longer, watching his daughter sleep, marveling at how completely his definition of something important had changed. Outside, snow began to fall gently over Boston, covering the city in pristine white, a blank page, a fresh start, a new life taking shape day by day. 6 months had passed since Emma came into Maxwell's life. Spring had arrived in Boston, bringing new routines and unexpected challenges. Maxwell sat in Dr. Winter's office, a child psychologist recommended by Emma's school, listening intently as she reviewed her observations. Overall, Emma is adjusting remarkably well, Dr. Winters explained, adjusting her glasses. She's making friends, participating in class, and her academic performance is excellent. However, there are some concerning behaviors. Maxwell leaned forward. What kind of behaviors? She becomes extremely anxious when you're late picking her up. Even 5 minutes can trigger tears. She hoards food in her bedroom, and her teacher mentioned she becomes distressed when asked about her mother. Maxwell's stomach tightened. Despite his best efforts, Emma still carried deep fears of abandonment. These are normal reactions to profound loss, Dr. Winters assured him. But there's something else I'd like to discuss. Emma mentioned that her mother left letters for her, to be opened on birthdays and special occasions. Maxwell nodded. Yes, there's a box of them. Olivia prepared them before she... He couldn't finish the sentence. Have you read them? No, Maxwell admitted. They're addressed to Emma. I've been saving them for when she asks. Dr. Winters nodded thoughtfully. Emma's birthday is coming up, correct? Her 7th? Next week, Maxwell confirmed, already planning the celebration. Emma's first birthday without her mother. That first birthday after loss is particularly difficult, Dr. Winters said gently. I suggest you prepare for complex emotions. The excitement of the day may be interwoven with grief. The birthday letter from her mother might help provide closure, or it might reopen wounds. Maxwell left the office with a heavy heart. For months, he'd been focused on practical matters, establishing routines, creating stability, ensuring Emma had everything she needed. But the emotional landscape of grief was unfamiliar territory. At home, he found Mrs. Sullivan and Emma baking cookies in the kitchen. "Daddy," Emma exclaimed, her face lighting up, "we're making chocolate chip cookies. I stirred the dough all by myself." Maxwell smiled, pushing aside his worries. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, Maxwell retrieved the box of letters from the top shelf of his closet. Olivia had organized them meticulously, envelopes labeled for each birthday until Emma turned 18, plus additional ones for graduations, first day of middle school, first heartbreak, wedding day. His fingers lingered on the envelope marked Emma's 7th birthday. What had Olivia written? What wisdom or memories had she preserved for their daughter? For the first time, Maxwell fully confronted the reality that Emma would grow up without her mother. He couldn't replace Olivia, couldn't fill the void she'd left. The weight of sole responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. His phone chimed with a text from Caroline. "Board needs answer on Singapore expansion by tomorrow." Maxwell set the phone aside without responding. Some decisions could wait. Right now, his daughter needed him, not just physically present but emotionally available in a way he'd never been before. Outside Emma's room, he heard a soft sound. Pushing the door open gently, he found her sitting up in bed, clutching her teddy bear, tears streaming down her face. "Emma, what's wrong?" "I had a dream about Mommy," she whispered. "She was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't hear her." Maxwell sat beside her, gathering her small form against his chest. "It's okay to miss her," he said softly. "I miss her too." Emma looked up in surprise. "You do?" "Of course, she gave me you." She... As Emma's tears subsided, Maxwell made a decision. The Singapore expansion would have to proceed without him. Emma's birthday, and all the complex emotions it would bring, required his full attention. Some battles were fought in boardrooms. Others, more important ones, were fought sitting on purple bedsheets, holding a grieving child close to your heart. "Happy birthday, dear Emma. Happy birthday to you." The chorus of voices filled Maxwell's transformed living room. Streamers hung from the ceiling, balloons crowded every corner, and a magnificent cake, shaped like a castle, dominated the dining table. Emma beamed at the center of attention, surrounded by classmates and their parents. Maxwell had invited her entire class, determined to make her 7th birthday special, despite the shadow of grief that lingered. "Make a wish," someone called as Emma prepared to blow out her candles. She closed her eyes tightly, took a deep breath, and extinguished all 7 flames in one blow. The room erupted in applause. As the children dispersed to play games, Mrs. Sullivan had organized Jessica, now a regular presence in their lives, as the mother of Emma's best friend Zoe, approached Maxwell. "You've done an amazing job," she said, gesturing around the festively decorated apartment. "Emma seems happy." "She does, doesn't she?" Maxwell watched his daughter laughing with her friends. "There are still moments, though. Last night she asked if her mother could see her birthday party from heaven." Jessica squeezed his arm sympathetically. "That's normal. My husband died when Zoe was 4. The questions never really stop, they just change. Maxwell looked at her with new understanding. He'd known Jessica was a single parent, but hadn't realized she was a widow. How do you handle it? The birthdays, the holidays, all the milestones. One day at a time, Jessica replied, and by keeping their memory alive. Speaking of which. She nodded toward the gift table where Emma was opening presents with delighted exclamations. The party continued successfully with cake, games, and the controlled chaos of excited 7-year-olds. By the time the last guest departed, Emma was flushed with happiness and surrounded by new toys. "Did you have a good birthday?" Maxwell asked as they surveyed the aftermath. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "The best." Zoe said it was even better than Chuck E. Cheese. Maxwell laughed, relieved that the day had gone well. "I have one more present for you," he said carefully. "It's from your mom." Emma went very still. "From Mommy? How?" Maxwell retrieved the letter from his office. "Before she died, your mom wrote you letters for your birthdays. This one is for today." Emma accepted the envelope with trembling hands. "Will you read it to me?" They settled on the couch, Emma curled against Maxwell's side. He opened the envelope carefully and began to read. "My dearest Emma, happy 7th birthday. I can hardly believe you're 7 already. You've always been my brave, smart girl, and I know you're growing more amazing every day. I'm sorry I can't be there to see you blow out your candles. I hope someone made you a special cake. You always loved the ones with too much frosting. I hope your day is filled with friends, laughter, and love. Remember how we used to say that birthdays are like new beginnings. Each one is a fresh start, a new chapter. This birthday might feel different without me there, but it's still your special day, a celebration of the wonderful person you are and are becoming. I want you to know that it's okay to be happy on your birthday, even if you miss me. It's okay to laugh and have fun. That's what I want most for you, happiness always. I love you to the moon and back, to infinity and beyond, forever and always. Mommy." When Maxwell finished reading, he realized Emma was crying silently, tears streaming down her cheeks. He pulled her closer, his own eyes burning with unshed tears. "She really wanted to be here," Emma whispered. "She did," Maxwell confirmed, "more than anything." They sat together in silence for a long moment, until Emma spoke again. "Daddy, do you think Mommy would like how we live now, with you taking care of me?" Maxwell thought about Olivia, her warmth, her kindness, her belief in him even when he hadn't believed in himself. "Yes," he said with certainty, "I think she would be very happy." That night, after tucking an exhausted Emma into bed, Maxwell returned to the living room, still decorated with the remnants of celebration. He picked up Olivia's letter, rereading her words. She had given him an incredible gift, not just their daughter, but the chance to become the man, the father, she had always believed he could be. For the first time since learning of her death, Maxwell allowed himself to truly grieve for Olivia, for what might have been, for the love that had created Emma, and for the mother his daughter would grow up without. "Mr. Price, there's an urgent matter requiring your attention," Rebecca's voice crackled through the speakerphone. Maxwell glanced at his watch, 3:15 p.m. School pickup was in 30 minutes. "Can it wait until tomorrow?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "I'm afraid not. The Thompson Group is threatening to pull their entire investment unless you personally attend the emergency board meeting this afternoon," Maxwell sighed. After nearly a year of his reduced role at Price Industries, Robert Thompson's patience had finally run out. The company's growth had slowed, and Thompson blamed Maxwell's divided priorities. "I'll call Mrs. Sullivan to pick up Emma," Maxwell conceded, reaching for his phone. The meeting was as contentious as expected. Thompson, flanked by 3 other board members, presented an ultimatum. Either Maxwell returned to full-time leadership or they would force a vote to remove him entirely. Your little experiment in work-life balance has cost shareholders 12% in value, Thompson stated coldly. Your personal situation, while unfortunate, cannot continue to impact this company. Maxwell maintained his composure, though anger simmered beneath the surface. My personal situation is my 7-year-old daughter who lost her mother, and I'm not returning to 80-hour weeks. Then perhaps it's time to consider selling your controlling interest, Thompson suggested. There are several interested parties. The meeting continued for hours, stretching well past dinner time. Maxwell texted Mrs. Sullivan, "Running late. Please feed Emma and start bedtime routine." When he finally arrived home at 9:30 p.m., the apartment was quiet. Mrs. Sullivan met him at the door with a worried expression. "Emma waited up as long as she could," she explained softly. "She was quite upset that you missed dinner. Said you promised to be home for taco night." Guilt washed over Maxwell. He had promised. "Is she asleep now?" Mrs. Sullivan nodded. "Just nodded off about 20 minutes ago. She wanted to wait in your room." Maxwell thanked her and headed to his bedroom, where he found Emma curled up on his bed, still in her school clothes, clutching her teddy bear. Her cheeks were streaked with dried tears, his heart constricted painfully. Carefully, he lifted her sleeping form and carried her to her own room. As he tucked her in, Emma stirred. "Daddy?" she murmured sleepily. "You didn't come home." "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. There was an emergency at work." Emma's eyes filled with fresh tears. "You promised we were supposed to have tacos and watch our show." "I know," Maxwell said, remorse heavy in his chest. "I'm really sorry." Emma turned away from him, curling around her teddy bear. That's what Mommy used to say too, when she had to work late. The comparison stung more than Maxwell expected. Had Olivia struggled with the same impossible balancing act? The thought that he was repeating patterns that had hurt Emma before was unbearable. "Emma," he began, but she had already closed her eyes, shutting him out. The next morning was strained. Emma was unusually quiet during breakfast, responding to his questions with one-word answers. "Are we still going to the aquarium this weekend?" he asked hopefully. Emma shrugged. "If you're not too busy." The words were delivered without emotion, but Maxwell felt their weight. In the past year, he'd built Emma's trust carefully, day by day. One missed dinner had cracked that foundation. As he drove her to school, Maxwell made a decision. The company had consumed enough of his life. He wouldn't let it take what mattered most. "Emma," he said as they waited in the drop-off line, "I promise I'll be at pickup today, on time, and we'll have a special dinner, whatever you want." Emma studied him skeptically. "Pizza with pineapple?" Maxwell smiled, relieved to see a spark of her usual spirit, even pineapple pizza. When he returned to the office, he called his attorney. "Caroline, I need you to prepare paperwork to sell my controlling interest in Price Industries." There was a stunned silence on the line. "Max, are you sure? This company is your life's work." "Not anymore," Maxwell replied with certainty. "I have more important priorities now." By 3 p.m., he was waiting outside Emma's school 15 minutes early. When Emma emerged and saw him, her face lit up with surprise and delight. "You're here!" she exclaimed, running to him. "I promised, didn't I?" Maxwell hugged her tightly. "And I have news. I'm going to be working less from now on, much less." Emma looked up at him, hope and wariness battling in her expression. Really, forever, really, forever. Maxwell knew there would be consequences. Financial adjustments, career implications, Thompson's satisfaction at winning. None of it mattered compared to the trust in his daughter's eyes. That evening, over pineapple pizza, Emma chatted happily about her day, the strain from the previous night forgotten. Maxwell watched her animated gestures, her easy laughter, and knew with absolute certainty that he had made the right choice. His phone remained silent in his pocket. The business world would continue turning without Maxwell Price at its center, and for the first time in his life, he was perfectly content with that. "Daddy, can I ask you something important?" Emma's voice was uncharacteristically serious as Maxwell helped her with homework at the kitchen table. Nearly 18 months had passed since she first appeared at his door. "Of course," Maxwell replied, setting aside the math worksheet they'd been reviewing. Emma took a deep breath. "Jessica asked if you're going to marry her." Maxwell nearly choked on his coffee. "What? When I was at Zoe's house yesterday, Jessica asked if I would be happy if you and her got married someday." Emma's blue eyes studied him intently. "Are you going to?" Maxwell's relationship with Jessica had evolved gradually over the past year, from fellow school parents to friends to something more. They'd been dating discreetly for 6 months, careful to shield the children from any uncertainty. Clearly, that caution had now evaporated. "Emma, Jessica and I care about each other very much," Maxwell began carefully. "But marriage is a big decision. We're not planning that right now." Emma considered this. "But you might someday." "It's possible," Maxwell admitted. "How would you feel about that?" Emma traced patterns on the table with her finger. "Would she be my new mom?" The question struck Maxwell's heart. "No one could ever replace your mom, Emma. Jessica knows that. She would be more like an additional person who loves you, like how Mrs. Sullivan cares for you, but different." Emma nodded slowly. "I like Jessica, and Zoe would be like my sister." A shadow crossed her face. "But what if you love Jessica more than me?" "That could never happen," Maxwell said firmly. "The love parents have for their children is different from any other kind of love. It doesn't get smaller when you add more people to a family. It grows." Emma seemed to accept this explanation. "Okay, but I get to be the flower girl if you do get married." Maxwell laughed, relieved by her practical condition. "Absolutely." Later that evening, after Emma was asleep, Maxwell called Jessica. "So," he began without preamble, "I hear you've been discussing marriage with my daughter." Jessica's embarrassed groan came through the line. "I'm so sorry. Zoe asked if we were going to be sisters someday, and it just escalated. I should have talked to you first." "Yes, you should have," Maxwell agreed, though without anger. "But since the topic is now on the table, what exactly are your thoughts?" There was a pause. "My thoughts are that I love you, Maxwell Price, and I love Emma, and I think we could be happy together. All of us." The simple declaration warmed Maxwell's heart. After selling his controlling interest in Price Industries, he had worried about starting over, professionally and personally. But the past 6 months had been among the happiest of his life. His new consulting firm allowed him to set his own schedule, and his relationship with Jessica had brought unexpected joy to both him and Emma. "I love you too," Maxwell said softly, "and I think you're right. We could be very happy." 2 days later, Maxwell received a call from an unfamiliar number with a Seattle area code. "Mr. Price, this is Alan Hayes, Olivia's brother." Maxwell froze. In all the documentation, there had been no mention of Olivia having any living family. "Mr. Hayes," Maxwell managed, "I wasn't aware Olivia had a brother." "Half-brother," Alan corrected. "Different fathers. We weren't close. I've been working overseas for years, just returned to the States last month and learned about Olivia's death." His voice faltered. "And about her daughter, my niece." Maxwell's protective instincts flared. "Emma is doing well. She's adjusted to her new life." "I'm glad to hear that," Alan said sincerely. "I'm not calling to disrupt anything, Mr. Price. I'd like to meet her. She's the only family I have left." Maxwell's mind raced. An uncle Emma had never known existed, another link to Olivia and her past. Another adult who might disappear from Emma's life. "I understand this is unexpected," Alan continued when Maxwell didn't respond. "I'm in Boston for a conference next week. perhaps we could meet first, just you and I, before involving Emma. It was a reasonable request, too reasonable to refuse without seeming paranoid or possessive. "All right," Maxwell agreed reluctantly. "Next week." After ending the call, Maxwell sat in his office, unease settling over him. He'd built a secure, loving world for Emma, and now an unknown variable had appeared. What did Alan Hayes really want? Would his presence in Emma's life be a gift or a complication? And why had Olivia never mentioned having a brother, even a distant one, in her letter to Maxwell? For the first time in months, Maxwell felt the ground shifting beneath his carefully constructed new life. He glanced at the photograph on his desk. Emma, at her 8th birthday party, beaming with chocolate cake on her chin. He had promised to protect her, to be the parent she needed. Some threats were obvious, others came disguised as long-lost family. The cafe Maxwell had chosen for his meeting with Alan Hayes offered excellent visibility, but enough ambient noise for privacy. He arrived early, selecting a table with a clear view of the entrance. At precisely noon, a man in his mid-30s entered, tall, with sandy hair and features that bore a subtle resemblance to Olivia's. He scanned the room, spotted Maxwell, and approached with a tentative smile. "Mr. Price? I'm Alan Hayes." He extended his hand. Maxwell stood, shaking it firmly. "Please sit down." As they ordered coffee, Maxwell studied Alan closely. The physical resemblance to Olivia was there, the shape of his eyes, the curve of his smile, but subtle enough that Maxwell might not have noticed if he hadn't been looking for it. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Alan began. "I understand this must seem strange after all this time." "It does," Maxwell agreed, "especially since Olivia never mentioned having a brother." Alan's expression clouded. "Our relationship was complicated. Our mother remarried when Olivia was 10 and I was 5. My father wasn't kind to her. By the time she turned 18, she'd cut ties with the family." He paused. "I tried to reconnect when I was older, but Olivia kept her distance. The last time I saw her was almost 8 years ago." The timeline aligned with when Maxwell had known Olivia. "And you've been overseas since then?" Alan nodded. "Engineering projects in Southeast Asia. When my contract ended, I came back to Seattle and tried to find Olivia. Instead, I found her obituary." His voice caught. "And learned about Emma." Maxwell maintained his neutral expression, though sympathy tugged at him. If Alan was telling the truth, he had lost his sister without the chance to reconcile. "I have photos," Alan said suddenly, reaching into his jacket, "from when we were kids. Before everything fell apart, I thought maybe Emma might like to see them someday, to know more about her mother's childhood." He slid several old photographs across the table. Maxwell examined them carefully, a young Olivia with a toddler Alan on her lap, both smiling at the camera. Another of teenage Olivia at what appeared to be Alan's elementary school graduation. "She looked after me when our parents couldn't," Alan explained softly. "Or wouldn't. She was more mother than sister sometimes." Maxwell felt his suspicions beginning to crack. The photographs appeared genuine, the emotion in Alan's voice authentic. "What exactly are you hoping for here, Mr. Hayes?" Alan met his gaze directly. "I'd like to meet my niece, not to disrupt her life or challenge your role as her father, just to know her. Maybe be part of her life in whatever way you're comfortable with." Maxwell considered this. Emma had blossomed in the past year, but she still carried the loss of her mother. Would knowing her uncle, this tangible connection to Olivia, help heal that wound, or reopen it? "Emma has been through a lot," Maxwell said carefully. "Her stability is my priority." "I understand completely," Alan assured him. "I'm staying in Boston for the next month, possibly longer if my job interview goes well. There's no rush. We could start with a brief meeting, see how Emma feels." Maxwell studied him for another long moment before coming to a decision. "I'll talk to Emma first, Explain who you are. If she's interested in meeting you, we'll arrange something casual, maybe lunch this weekend." Alan's face lit up. "Thank you. That's more than fair." As they finished their coffee, Maxwell found himself asking, "Did you know about Emma before reading the obituary?" Alan shook his head. "No, Olivia and I weren't in contact when she was born. I had no idea I was an uncle until a few weeks ago." He hesitated. "Did you know about Emma from the beginning?" "No," Maxwell admitted. "Olivia never told me she was pregnant. Emma showed up at my door after Olivia died." Understanding passed between the two men, both kept in the dark, both missing years of connection to people who mattered. That evening, Maxwell sat Emma down for a careful conversation. "Emma, something unexpected happened today. I met someone who knew your mom, her younger brother, your uncle Alan." Emma's eyes widened. "Mommy had a brother? I didn't know that." "They weren't close," Maxwell explained. "He's been living in other countries for many years. But he's back now, and he'd like to meet you." Emma processed this information, her expression thoughtful. "Does he look like Mommy?" "A little," Maxwell smiled. "He has some photographs of when they were children. He thought you might like to see them." Emma nodded slowly. "I want to meet him." "Are you sure there's no rush?" "I'm sure," Emma said decisively. "Maybe he can tell me stories about Mommy when she was little. I don't know any of those." The simple wish pierced Maxwell's heart. Despite his best efforts, there were parts of Olivia, of Emma's heritage, that he couldn't provide. Saturday arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures. They met Alan at a restaurant near the public garden, neutral territory, with the promise of a walk afterward if things went well. Maxwell watched carefully as Emma and Alan were introduced. Emma was uncharacteristically shy at first, studying her uncle with serious eyes, but when Alan produced the childhood photos of Olivia, Emma's reserve melted. "Mommy had braces," she giggled, pointing to a teenage Olivia's awkward smile. "For 3 years." Alan confirmed. "She used to say they were medieval torture devices." As lunch progressed, Maxwell observed the natural ease developing between uncle and niece. Alan answered Emma's questions about Olivia's childhood patiently, sharing stories that painted a picture of the girl who became Emma's mother. When Emma went to the restroom, Alan turned to Maxwell. "She's remarkable. She has Olivia's spirit. And her artistic talent," Maxwell added. "Emma's teacher says she's extraordinarily creative." Alan smiled sadly. "Olivia wanted to be an artist before life took her in another direction. Our stepfather didn't approve, said it wasn't practical." Another piece of Olivia's past clicked into place for Maxwell. Her passion for art, her work at the gallery, her encouragement of Emma's creativity. She had found her way back to what she loved, despite the obstacles. As they strolled through the public garden after lunch, Emma walked between the two men, occasionally taking both their hands to swing between them. Maxwell felt an unexpected sense of peace. Rather than threatening his relationship with Emma, Alan's presence seemed to complement it, filling in gaps in Emma's understanding of her mother that Maxwell never could. When they said goodbye, Alan crouched to Emma's level. "I've got something for you," he said, handing her a small box. "It was your mother's when she was about your age." Emma opened it to find a delicate silver bracelet with a small palette charm. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "She never went anywhere without it," Alan explained. "Said it reminded her to keep creating, no matter what." As they watched Alan walk away, Emma looked up at Maxwell. "I like him," she declared. "He makes me feel like I still have a little piece of Mommy." Maxwell squeezed her hand gently. "That's exactly what I was hoping." Emma's 9th birthday arrived with a house full of laughter. 2 years had passed since she'd first appeared at Maxwell's door, 2 years that had changed everything. "Uncle Alan!" Emma cried as the doorbell rang, rushing to hug her mother's brother, who'd become a constant in their lives over the past year. The apartment filled quickly. Jessica and her daughter Zoe, school friends, and Mrs. Sullivan all gathered to celebrate. Maxwell watched his daughter confidently navigate the party, so different from the frightened child she'd once been. After the guests left, only their closest circle remained. Maxwell handed Emma an envelope. From Mom. Emma accepted it with quiet reverence. "Would you read it, Daddy?" Maxwell unfolded Olivia's letter and read, "My dearest Emma, happy 9th birthday. You're growing into such a wonderful person. By now, you've lived longer without me than with me. That breaks my heart. But I find comfort knowing you're surrounded by love. 9 is a special age, still filled with childhood magic. Hold on to that, Emma. See wonder in ordinary things. I have a special request. Plant something, a flower, a tree, anything that grows. Watch it flourish and remember that love works the same way. With care and attention, it only gets stronger with time. I love you infinitely, Mom." "Can we plant something?" Emma asked when he finished. "Of course. What would you like?" "A tree, something that will get really big." Alan smiled. "Your mom loved cherry trees. She said they reminded her that beautiful things might be brief, but they return year after year." "A cherry tree," Emma exclaimed. "Can I see it from my window?" "We'd need a bigger place for that," Maxwell said gently. Jessica exchanged a glance with Maxwell. "We've been thinking about finding a house with a yard, somewhere with room for everyone." Emma's eyes widened. "All of us? Together?" Maxwell nodded. "If that's what you want." "And maybe a dog?" Emma asked hopefully. The adults laughed. "Possibly," Maxwell conceded. Later, tucking Emma into bed, Maxwell marveled at how far they'd come. "Daddy?" Emma asked sleepily. "Do you think Mommy would be happy about everything?" "I think she wanted you to be happy and loved. And you are. So yes, she would be very happy." Emma nodded, satisfied. "It was the best birthday ever. Better than last year." Maxwell teased. "Every year is better," Emma yawned, "because we're together." As she drifted off, Maxwell reflected on their journey. From that rainy night to this moment of contentment, love had grown between them, expanding to include others, while honoring the woman who had connected them. Olivia had been right. Love, with care and attention, only grows stronger with time. Outside, stars appeared in the darkening sky, bright with promise for all the birthdays